Hello, it's time for another bonus. This time, for the gameplay, I have some Watch Dogs for you. For it is the flavour of the week, sold 4 million copies in its launch week, and it's what I've been playing. These are pretty much the opening scenes of the game, where you're first handed the reins and you're given a taste of the open world. Anyway, on to your questions and comments, and first up, appropriately enough, is Geeky Nerd for the win, saying, I think Watch Dogs is overrated. What do you think? Well, as far as what I think, I did enjoy Watch Dogs. I thought it was a pretty good game. It's probably not going to be my game of the year, but I was able to sink about 30 or 40 hours into the game, and I enjoyed most of them. It kind of does that, typical Ubisoft thing where there's a whole bunch of stuff to do, and it's kind of the same thing over and over again, but you get a reward at the end of it, so you do it anyway. And to be fair, some mechanics in the game aren't too badly done. I really like the combination of stealth gunplay and hacking. I like the fact that you can sort of spy on your enemy and hack into security cameras and scope out enemies and see who's going to call in reinforcements, see who's carrying a hackable grenade. I like the way you can approach combat like that. Some of the stuff I disliked, like car chases, are a little bit drawn out. Sometimes they can get a bit boring. Like if you're off a mission and you do something which leads the police to chasing you, sometimes it's just easier to reload than endure a 10-minute police chase. Because it's not fun, it's not really fun at all. But there is a bunch of stuff to do, and it's not all combat and car chases. There's stuff like environmental puzzles, where you've got to track a cable to its source, or find the right angle of a security camera to scan a QR code, stuff like that. So overall, the game, enjoyable, good waste of time if you're into that sort of thing. It is just a GTA clone with a hacking gimmick, but it pulls off most of it reasonably well. I'd give it 1 thumbs up out of a possible 2 thumbs. Now, does that mean it's overrated? Should it have been 2 thumbs up? Well, that rather depends on your own expectations, doesn't it? There's no doubt that the initial trailers, the initial reveals of Watch Dogs were pretty compelling. It seemed to have a really interesting idea. It seemed to be different from your typical GTA clones. But it turns out in practice, it's not wildly different. It is pretty much the same formula that we're familiar with some unique takes, some twists. So I suppose, from a critical perspective, are we supposed to judge a game based on its own merits, or on the merits set up by its own promotion? Now, the logical mind would say, well, clearly the advertising prior to the game's release is fairly inconsequential. You'd have to be an idiot to believe everything you see a year before release. The people behind the trailers are put in the unenviable position of trying to predict where the game is going to go visually and, how it's going to play, when it might not be anywhere near finished. And if you overestimate what your programmers are able to do with the graphics engine, and you present the game as being slightly prettier as the final release might turn out to be, well, you get accused of downgrading the graphics. When, at the time of making the trailer, the game might be completely unfinished. It might look pretty raw, pretty ugly, and in order to present the game, you need to create a vertical slice, which is kind of a maquette, a mock-up of what the final game might look like. Now, if you do this right, it should be undistinguishable from the final game. But with the chaotic nature of software development, sometimes it's not always possible to predict precisely where a game will end up, and sometimes things might look a little bit better than the final game, and this, well, it happens, and I'm not necessarily going to defend it, but I do think anything that's shown pre-release should be taken with a pinch of salt, and, try not to get your hopes up too much. Ultimately, it is the final delivered product that is worthy of your critical appraisal, and for what it's worth, Watch Dogs isn't bad. I think there's definitely promise there for a sequel if they, chamfer off some of the annoyances, polish up some of the game, and try and make the world slightly richer, slightly more believable. Then I think, Watch Dogs 2 could be a very compelling game. But as a standalone, Watch Dogs is an entertaining title. It's probably worth the price of admission for the amount of hours you'll get out of it. Is it overrated? Well, I guess that depends on your own expectations, doesn't it? Next up, Boise Gang Gaming says, Hey Stu, have you ever played the Halo series before? Personally, I don't see how anyone could have an Xbox without having Halo. The two are almost synonymous with each other. If you have played it, would you make a video on it? Or are you not really interested in it? I actually quite like the Halo series. I think I've played most of the games. Certainly the main sequence, I've played all of them. I tend to favour the single player or the co-op over the multiplayer though. I never really got into the competitive side of Halo, so I just, I play the campaign, I enjoy it. Maybe play some Firefight, maybe play through the campaign again with a friend, and that's about it. But as far as the prospect of future Halo content, I believe, Halo 5 is coming out at some point. Now, clearly I'm not going to plan on doing like a long Halo series, but I do think I could probably do a one-off. I think the Weapons of format could work pretty well for that, so I might do the Weapons of Halo 5. Gives me a chance to talk about, some of the more interesting armaments there, and I don't think a single video will annoy anybody who's not interested in Halo, because it is just a one-off. So yeah, that's a distinct possibility depending on my circumstances at the time of release. Blake Swighart says, just curious, how often do YouTubers get paid? Is it instantaneous for every video, or is it an every 2 weeks kind of thing? It's monthly payments in my case. Machinima pays me a monthly PayPal payment about halfway through the month. It might vary from network to network, but I think Google operates on a monthly payment schedule, so most networks will do the same. Michael Hancock says, considering Microsoft are going to offer Xbox Ones without a Kinect, does it make having one, or developing for them, essentially pointless? Well, as far as using the Kinect is concerned, I still get some use out of it. The voice commands are useful from time to time. The voice recognition is on point, I can say that much, and, navigating between games, if you want to just switch something, you just say Xbox, go to such and such, and, off it goes. It works well, it actually does. I also like the fact that you can use it as a chat microphone. It's got noise cancellation. It's not perfect, but it does work reasonably well. And I can see some utility with the camera when it comes to streaming things. So there's a few points of utility with the Kinect that I found. There's also stuff like gesture control and, of course, there are Kinect games as well, but these are less of a factor for me. From a developer's point of view, there was never much of an incentive to develop for the Kinect anyway, because most developers develop games for multiple platforms, which means you target the PS4, the Xbox One, maybe even the Wii U, and only one of those has the Kinect, so you can't really use any of those features in any sort of meaningful way without designing for it, which, if you're going multi-platform, would seem like a bit of a waste. So it's only really Xbox exclusive games that could target the Kinect, and, what is there? There's Halo, there's Gears of War, there's Forza, and none of these really benefit from motion control or anything like that, so it is of limited benefit for games. Having said that though, the Kinect could have some utility when it comes to games if you use it right. So there's the potential, maybe there'll be a killer app, maybe there'll be a game that uses Kinect so well that it will be a must-have. Maybe. I don't know though. It's not something I'd like to gamble on, so it's nice to have the option to get an Xbox One without the Kinect. By now, the initial install base is there. There's, 3 or 4 million Kinects out in the wild. It's really down to developers to make decent games for it. There's Harmonix, I think they're working on Fantasia for the Kinect, which could be interesting, it could be. Or it could just be a novelty that gets old pretty fast. Anyway, I think it's more important for the Xbox now to compete on price with the PS4. Ideally, by 2015, they want to be coming in slightly cheaper, because obviously the PS4 has the edge in pure performance. But, power isn't everything when it comes to the consoles. Look at the Wii last generation, that ran away with it, and it was basically a GameCube. Alright, next up, it's a long one. Koza says, hey Stu, this one is actually pretty in-depth, I think, so I'm hoping for an answer. Both you and Turtle Biscuit said a similar thing at one time. On the latter's case, it was that we don't take suggestions, we look at graphs and charts to determine what's trending. And I believe you said something to its like once. It seems quite obvious with the fact that the Wolfenstein video went up soon after the game's release, and now the same happened to Watch Dogs. But, is it good? I'm not saying you won't enjoy doing these, but it still feels like you're putting content that's going to be popular over content that you want to personally make, like all these History of and similar series. Shouldn't charts and graphs get pushed aside by common sense? By just thinking, that's a cool idea for a video, I'll do it. That's what made you stick with COD for so long, to be honest. The thought that it's my shtick. That's what's keeping me popular, I need to do it for as long as the numbers are good enough. So, while I will, as always, call for more variety stuff, can you explain what's going on behind the scenes and how you, and possibly even other YouTubers, choose what to produce? I suppose there's a large number of different factors when it comes to choosing stuff. You've got, the stuff that you personally want to produce. For whatever reason, it could be a hobby or an interest that you have, something you want to share with the world, or just, some sort of higher purpose or an aesthetic goal. Now, I quite like doing stuff about video game history because I kind of think that's interesting. It's interesting to me, and I think other people are interested in it as well, and I can kind of see a value in that. I also like to do stuff which lets me experiment graphically, you know, anything which gives me free rein with graphic design. If I get to use bold colours and strong typography, I'm pretty happy on that front. So these are kind of primary internal drives to make videos. But there are also other primary considerations on the practical side of things. There are cost factors, there are effort and production time factors as well. So you could have a grand idea and you could really want to do it, but if it's too expensive or if it would take too much time, then you might be put off. For instance, my brief history videos. I love doing those, they're interesting to me and I do think they come across as pretty good videos, but they do take me a couple of weeks to put together. There's a lot of research involved and sometimes I have to buy games as well. Recently, for instance, I've bought quite a few pirate games. So when you buy quite a few games for a single video, it kind of erodes any profits you might have otherwise made. And while I can expect reasonably good performance from those videos, you know, 100,000 views maybe, that's not enough to have like an unlimited budget. I do need to be careful. But like I say, you know, your own internal drive kind of overcomes some of these reservations. So I can see myself doing those from time to time. A brief history will probably return maybe a few episodes a year. Anyway, so those are primary factors. The secondary factors basically revolve around the audience and your audience's reception to stuff. Basically how well stuff does. I suppose, you know, if there's a new game that's come out, timeliness, getting stuff out in launch week as well, this is a factor here. So the primary stuff is the stuff that you want to make, the secondary stuff is the stuff that your audience might want to receive, and it is important to factor both of these sides in. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Stu, you should just do what you want to do the most valuable videos that you can. But really that's only one part of the equation, because I don't just like making videos, I also like having people watch my videos. So there's kind of a balance between column A and column B, and it's difficult sometimes to find the perfect balance. If you favour the primary factors, then you might find your audience loses interest. You might find the videos that you want to do can't be produced on a regular schedule, so if you go too far down that route, you might only do 4 videos a year, and you won't be able to sustain yourself. On the other hand, if you chase the secondary factors too much, maybe you start to cut corners just to get more videos out, maybe you start to dumb your videos down, maybe you start to, you know, to do sort of more trashy content that gets the views, but doesn't necessarily satisfy in quite the same way. And you see a lot of this on YouTube, you see a lot of this sort of cheaper, easier to produce content, and there's nothing intrinsically wrong with it, but it's a little bit more superficial, you know? The trouble is everything kind of boils down to views, but I don't think views are necessarily, I don't think all views are equal. So, as with so many things, it's a question of balance. So one of the things I've been doing recently are, you know, trying different things. I mean, really, I've got to remember, I still have a COD channel. The vast majority of my subscribers come from my Call of Duty videos. And I've got to steer these 400,000 people round to a different type of content, which is no easy task. There's always going to be some friction, there's always going to be some confusion and some upset. But eventually we'll get there, and hopefully I'll find another niche, another angle, hopefully a blend of stuff. I don't really want to be tied to one thing. That's probably bad news for any channel, because one thing can only be ridden for so long. So at the minute, I'm kind of on the quest for a blend. Essentially a collection of form factors for videos. Maybe a few simultaneous series. You know, you've got Iconic Arms, you've got The Weapons Of, maybe stuff like Retro Hoy, even Game DNA. These might make regular reappearances, but it's fluid, and I think you have to stay fluid on something like YouTube. So I'll take each video as it comes. So, recent lessons, I learned that Iconic Arms has a lot of promise. Game DNA has a lot of promise as well, although I think it's more suited to modern classics than it is new titles, so I might change the focus on new releases to games that have been out for a couple of years but have proven phenomenally popular. For instance, the Game DNA on Minecraft worked much better than the one on Titanfall. So Game DNA I might adapt for modern classics. Maybe I'll look at stuff like Counter-Strike, League of Legends, huge games with considerable influence, but looking at their origins could be interesting. I think the occasional special can work. They do tend to be quite a bit of work to put together, but the Easter eggs video went down pretty well. Titanfall series. Now, in retrospect, I think about 6 episodes of Titanfall would have been just fine. 10 is probably too many. I am going to finish the series, but I think I might shy away from doing runs of videos of longer than 6 episodes. I don't think there are that many games which can support long runs. At least not with my sort of format, the weekly stuff. I think if you want to have a variety channel, you do need to keep things varied. You can't spend 2 months on a single game. I was pretty happy with the Weapons of format. I can see that returning. It didn't set the world alight on views, but that would be, I think, a welcome addition to a variety channel. So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm thinking. I think if you are a YouTuber, you can't just factor in what your audience wants, and you can't just factor in what you want either. There has to be a concord, you know, there has to be kind of a happy medium between producing stuff that you're interested in and having an audience that's grateful for it and willing to watch your stuff. Because even if you're producing stuff that satisfies you, if nobody watches it, it can be a bit of a hit to your self-esteem. Anyway, I'll keep on producing stuff, I'll keep on trying to find that magical blend, and if all else fails, I'll just produce advanced warfare weapon guides. Jordan X. Brooks says, "Hi Stu, was just wondering, are you excited for this year's E3? And what games are you hoping to see shown off?" Am I excited for E3? Not really, no. Don't get me wrong, I'm hungry for new games and I'm looking forward to this autumn. But as far as E3 is concerned, I don't know, we're going to see a few new trailers. I don't know if there's going to be that many surprises. I think we know most of the stuff that's in the works. But maybe there'll be a few surprises, who knows. They announced Forza Horizon 2 this week. I'm actually quite excited for that. Also Drive Club as well. It seems I have an insatiable thirst for driving games, and, well, there's a few coming out. There's Grid Autosport coming out this month. But otherwise, there's a bit of a drought over summer, so I guess, you know, we're all waiting for Christmas. Mouldy says, "Stu, do you think you'll finish the mentioned Metro Last Light weapon guide, now that they're releasing the 2033/Last Light Redux? And Battlefield Hardline. Thoughts on the shift from military to police setting?" The Metro Last Light video probably will make an emergence. As it stands, I have a script about 80% written, I have an intro, and I have all of the footage recorded. So I just need to finish off the script, do some graphics, and then put it all together. So yes, that probably will come out. Unfortunately, it will have Xbox 360 graphics, because that's the platform I played on, that's the platform I recorded on. Which, I mean, with the Redux version coming out, it might look a little bit ropey. Which bothers me, but it doesn't bother me enough to buy the game again. So I'll probably put that together once I've completed the Titanfall run. There's also Sniper Elite 3 is coming out around that time, the end of this month. So I'm probably going to do the weapons of Sniper Elite 3 as well. I played the first two, and visually they're very nice. The kill cams are incredibly impressive, and they'll lend themselves well to a video. But otherwise, it'll be a fairly average third-person shooter. I don't mind doing one-offs for mediocre games though, even though in the comments it's all going to be, "Oh, this game's rubbish." I don't care, I'm done with it now. There's another FPS coming out next week called Enemy Front, and it looks abysmal, but I still considered doing the weapons of for it, because, you know, nobody's going to buy it, nobody's going to play it, but they might still want to see the weapons on offer. I eventually decided against that though. I thought I'd focus on getting Titanfall done as quickly as possible, get that out of the way, so I can move on to the much more in-demand iconic arms, by way of the Pirate Special, of course. I can see me getting some mileage out of the iconic arms format, so I probably will do quite a few episodes of that, but I'm going to do them in blocks of 6. So Series 1 will be 6 episodes, and then we'll see how it performs, and we'll take it from there. Anyway, the other part of the question, Battlefield Hardline. Do you know, actually, I'm more excited for this game than I should be, because Battlefield 4 was kind of a mess at launch. That being said though, you know, cops versus robbers, it could be really interesting. As you might expect, I do get asked to do Battlefield content quite regularly, and I would quite like to. It's just a question of finding an opportunity and a format that works for it. So it's a possibility. I might do maybe 4 videos, maybe 1 for each major class. I might do kind of in the weapons of format, but like just like a run through of the guns, and we'll talk about them, and there'll be some insight as to what the weapons are and where they're from, that sort of thing. Maybe it'll be mixed in with gameplay tips, maybe it won't be, I don't know at this stage. Anyway, we're at about 20 minutes, so I'll wrap it up here. I really need to be writing scripts today. I've got the Titanfall G2A4 script to write. Ideally, it'll be finished by this evening, but we'll see about that. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, farewell.